the Bronica SQ-Ai. The camera that changed my life. No, for real. A few years ago, I was about to give up on photography, and then I heard about this Japanese brand that had made cameras that looked and worked like Hasselblads, but they were available for half the price. Since then, I've taken it with me almost everywhere, from the heat of Death Valley to the frozen Midwest and all the places in between. After almost 2 years and more than 250 rolls of 120 film, I feel like I know this camera well enough to tell you everything about it. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adrian. I'm a Spanish-American full-time photographer. I shoot both film and digital, and today we'll be talking about my favorite camera ever, the Bronica SQ-Ai. This is a medium format film camera that can create beautiful, stunning 6x6 negatives. You'll find links to pretty much all the gear that I'll be talking about today in the description down below. And while we're gonna be talking about camera gear in today's video, most of the videos in this channel are from the field, so consider subscribing if you wanna see me in action using these and other cameras. Let's talk about the Bronica SQ-Ai. The first thing is the size. It's not a huge camera, but it's definitely not small. It's not a light camera coming at 1.6 kilos or more than 3.5 pounds with the 80mm lens. It's even heavier with bigger lenses like the 150mm at 1.9 kilos or more than 4 pounds. It is though a very easy to handle camera, although you're gonna find yourself more often than not using it on a tripod. You can use a strap for your neck, but I do not recommend doing that. I did it for a while. It's not only about the weight that it can hurt your neck, but it's also that if the camera bounces for any reason, it can hit you really hard and it really hurts. So be careful with that. This Bronica is a modular medium format film camera. You can detach pretty much every element, the finder, the film back, the lens, then you have the camera body. Let's do that and let's look at each component one by one. The first one is the lens. To detach the lens, you have this switch here on the left side. Push it down and then we can unscrew the lens. So that's one component. Another component is the film back. Again, on the left side, you have this button that you can push to detach the film back. And the last one is the finder. This time on the right side of the camera, you have another switch that can pull down and you can detach the finder. So these are the four main components of this system: the camera itself, a lens, a finder, and a film back. This is, in my opinion, the greatest advantage of this camera system. With the same camera body, you can switch film back, so you can have different film stocks, color, black and white, different access speeds. You can switch the finder too for different situations, and of course you can switch lenses. Let's look at the camera body first. I forgot to say that you can also switch the ground glass that you use to focus through the finder. This is the camera body. This is the heart of the Bronica system. and it's pretty light. You can see in the front the huge hole for the lens. Medium format film lenses are pretty big. Then you have here the shutter button that has a lock position. As you can see, that is locked, you can't press it. This way you can press it. On the right side we have the switch to release the finder. This is, I think it's called the wind on lever, I believe. This is just to advance the film. And we have the multiple exposure switch. If we switch it this way, we are taking multiple exposures. This is just a single exposure, and this is to lock the mirror up. We'll be talking about that shortly. There is nothing on the back of the camera body. You attach the film back here, and on the left side you have the switch to release the lens. You have here a cable release. This is a PC flash sync that I've never used, and this is the selector for the shutter speed. The shutter speed in this camera goes all the way from 1/500th of a second to bulb. This is a difference from this model to other models because other models don't have bulb position, and the longest before bulb is 16 seconds. This is how this camera works. When you're composing your image, you are holding the camera like this, so the image goes through the lens, gets reflected on the mirror, and you are able to see it here on the finder. The mirror is also protecting the film from being exposed. To take a picture and to get this film exposed, and by the way, the only way to take a picture with this camera when you don't have a film back attached is to set it to multiple exposure mode. So now we cock the shutter, and now we can shoot, and we see that the mirror goes up and lets the light go through the lens and exposes the film that is attached here at the back. One thing worth mentioning is when you take the picture, the mirror goes up and you cannot see the image here anymore. The mirror is not reflecting the light that's going through the lens, so you have to wind to see the image again. These are the basics, but this camera can do much more. As you can see, there are some connectors here on top. The finder that I have doesn't have any electronics in it, doesn't have any connectors, but you can buy other finders that will use those connectors to give you a reading of the scene that is going through the lens, so you do not need to have an external light meter. In my case, yes, I do need to have a light meter and read the scene and take a exposure reading myself. Let's put this to the side and let's talk about the next component, the film back. There are backs for every kind of film: 220, 120, 35. This is 6x6, but you can buy 6x4, 5. So there are a bunch of film backs out there. I have the regular 120 6x6. This is the newer model. You can tell because the ASA selector is on the back and not on the top like the older models. It's okay, it doesn't really matter. This film back doesn't do anything special for me, but as you can see, it has connectors here too that will connect to those finders that I mentioned before. So this film back will give the whole system the information that you select here. Otherwise, this doesn't do anything. If you don't have that kind of finder, this is just useless for you. Other than that, the film back doesn't have anything else. It's pretty simple. It has the darkest light here that you can't pull out because it's not attached to the camera, so you don't expose your film accidentally. I do not have any film here. We're gonna be loading some film later, but for now, as you can see, this is empty and pretty simple. Let's attach it to the camera here. It has a frame counter here, so it tells you how many shots you have left. The next component is the finder. As I said, I have a waist level finder. It's very simple, no electronics, no nothing. It's just a piece of plastic and some metal, I guess, that you can open. It's just a hole to put on top of the camera so you can see how the image that you are composing. It does have a magnifying glass here so you can focus your image, but other than that, it's very, very simple. I'm gonna attach it back here, and the camera is almost back. Put it to the side. Of course, the last component, a component in every camera system, is the lenses. This is the 80mm lens 2.8. is the lens that I use the most with this camera. It's a normal lens. That means that it's a 45mm equivalent in 35, and it gives you a normal field of view. The other one I have right now is the 150mm f4. And this one gives you something around 80 to 85mm equivalent in 35. This is a beautiful lens. It's bigger and heavier, but really beautiful. These apertures might not impress you, 2.8 and f4. but bear in mind that this is medium format, so the depth of field of this lens is more or less equivalent to a 1.4 in 35, and this I believe is like an f2, so they will give you a very shallow depth of field when you are shooting them wide open. I used to have two more lenses for this system. I used to have the 50mm f3.5 and the 250mm f5.6, but I got rid of them because this system is pretty heavy, and if you are hiking or backpacking, it's just not realistic to bring all of it. So I got rid of those two because I use them less than these two. The reason is because the 250 is just a huge and super heavy lens. I love the 50mm lens because it's wider. This is 45, so I can't really get wide shots anymore with this camera now, but it has a lot of distortion, the 50mm one. I didn't really like the results that I was getting, so even though I'm a little bit limited because I can't take wide shots with this camera, that's fine because I can use digital for that. So I'm gonna attach this lens back in here. That's the way you do it. Let's put this to the side. So this is the whole system as I showed you before. It's a beautiful camera. I really enjoy using this camera. To compose a picture, you just look through the finder here, move the camera, you focus here. You can use the magnifying glass to actually focus precisely. To take a picture, you have to take in consideration a lot of things. First of all, as I said, you have to unlock the shutter, you have to make sure that you have film, the film back is attached, the lens is properly attached, you have batteries. Forgot to show you the bottom of the camera, but it just has the batteries here. This is a tripod mount that I have right now. And of course, do not forget to pull the darkest light out of there so we can expose the film, and that's how it works. Let me take a picture real quick. Have to cock the shutter, and now we can take a picture. You can see you cannot see anymore through the lens because the mirror is up and the film was exposed. So now we can just advance to the next frame and we are ready to take another picture. Once we are done, we can just put the darkest light back. Be careful with the darkest light. You can see this circle here. When you put it back, you have to align it with this circle here. So this way, circle with circle. If you put it the other way around, bad things might happen. I did it once and I didn't ruin my photos, but almost. They were pretty dusty, full of dust. It's like it doesn't really seal this thing if you put it the other way around. So just be aware of that. I wanted to talk about how to take long exposures with this camera now. It's something that I do very often and I love the results of long exposures on film. And the way to do it with this model, well, one way would be to just set the camera to bulb mode, and that will keep the shutter open as long as you have the shutter button pressed, or if you're using a cable release, of course, that would be a better way to do it. But the problem with using bulb mode here is that that's gonna use battery, it's gonna drain it, and it's gonna drain it very quickly. So it's a very bad idea if you are taking, say, long exposures of 1 minute, 2 minutes, or even much longer than that. Your batteries are gonna die very quickly. What I do instead is I use a T mode on the lens. As you can see, there is this little switch here that you can pull down. Once you do that, you can move this little thingy here and you put the lens on T mode. And what that does, by the way, I forgot to mention that all these lenses are leaf shutter lenses. That means that the shutter is on the lenses. The lenses are responsible for opening and closing the shutter to expose the film. So when you set this T mode on the lens, when you press the shutter is gonna stay open as long as you want. The way to close it again is just to switch it back to A. A is just the regular mode and the regular exposure mode. So that's not gonna use batteries, so you just have to press the shutter once. You don't even need to use a cable release. I would still recommend it because if you're touching the camera like this, you're gonna add or introduce some vibrations. So if you use a cable release, it's better. But technically you only have to press the shutter once, and the shutter will remain open as long as you want. No batteries used here, so that's awesome. I've taken several hour long exposures with this camera, up to 8 hours, and they work perfectly fine. So you might have noticed that the mirror in this camera is pretty big. Every time you take a photo, that mirror goes up, boom, and it hits the camera and it creates some vibration. So if you're shooting at a speed of say 125 1/250 or 1/500th of a second. That should be fine, but if you're shooting at slower shutter speeds, that might make your photo look blurry. So a way to avoid that is to use, of course, a tripod and then lock the mirror up before taking the photo. To do so, on the right side we have this switch. It has 3 positions: N, S, and C. N is the regular position where the mirror is down and then it goes up as soon as you press the shutter. With S, we can move the mirror up for just one shot. So when we press the shutter, the mirror is already up, and the only thing that happens is that the shutter opens, lets the light in, and exposes the film, and then it closes again. All the time the mirror is gonna be up, so it's not gonna hit the camera, it's not gonna create those vibrations. Right now I have a very big and heavy tripod that can handle this camera perfectly fine, but for more than a year I used a Manfrotto B3. It's a travel tripod. It's not designed to hold cameras this big, and I can assure you that it works just fine. I took very long exposures with using that tripod, regular exposures, and it works just fine. So you don't have to have a huge tripod for this camera, even though it's a little bit heavy. As you can see, I'm surrounded by tools now. That's not an accident. That's the way I used to look at and to think of cameras before getting to know this one. I still believe that cameras are just that. They are just tools to create that image that we are after. The final image, the final print is the main goal in photography. But this little one, the Bronica SQ-Ai, show me that you can love your tools, and there is nothing wrong with that. That you can enjoy using your camera, and that might lead to better images because you are enjoying what you are doing. This camera has pushed me out there more than any other camera ever, and it has inspired me to create images because I enjoy using it so much. Now, is it gonna inspire everyone the same way that it has inspired me? Is it gonna be as good as it has been for me to everyone? Probably not, and the reason is because this camera is a very personal camera. It has very specific downsides that you have to be willing to deal with if you are to enjoy using it. One thing that I love about this camera is the finder. The finder is just gorgeous. It's super bright. You can see everything so clear, and that leads to better compositions because you can see everything on your frame. That leads me to another advantage of this camera, and it's that it's slow. It slows you down, but I think in a good way, at least for the kind of photography that I like to do. It has 12 frames, and I find that to be a good compromise between the large format where you have to take or make your images one by one. 35mm has 36 or 24 or 36 exposures, but yeah, I find this camera, a medium format in general, of course, to be a good compromise. And the last advantage that I wanted to mention about this camera is that somewhat is very underrated because everyone is out there looking for a Hasselblad. That is the icon and the symbol of medium format, but those cameras can be really expensive. Everyone is looking for one, and you can get this one for half or even less the price. I built my whole system. I don't know about the prices nowadays, but I bought the camera body, film back, the finder, this lens, the other 3 lenses, and another film back for around $1,000. That's a lot of money. This camera, when it was released 25 years ago, it used to cost over $25,000, the whole system. I bought it for $1,000, and for $1,000 in Hasselblad, you are lucky if you get just this package of camera body, film back, and lens. Like really lucky. So it's more affordable than a Hasselblad. You get pretty much the same image quality. These lenses are pretty good. They might not be as reliable as a Hasselblad, and they might be harder to fix and clean if you have any problem with them, because Hasselblad, I think you can repair Hasselblads pretty much anywhere. These cameras might be a little bit harder. Disadvantages, again, this camera is super heavy, and if you have more than 2 or 3 lenses, it's just gonna be very hard for you to bring everything with you on a hike or a backpacking trip. The slowness that I mentioned a few seconds ago might be a big disadvantage for you to forget about photographing your pets or your kids with this camera, unless you have a big bank account and a lot of time to develop all the rolls and or bring them to the camera store. Speaking of the cost, I have a video that I uploaded a few weeks ago talking about how much it costs to shoot medium format film. You'll find the link around here. I recommend you to take a look at that video to know what to expect if you are still getting started with medium format. Before finishing up here, I just wanted to mention one problem that I have with this camera is the dark slide. There is no place for you to leave it. I think the Hasselblads have a place here on the film bag where you can just put the darkest light when you are shooting the camera. This one has nothing, no place to leave your darkest light, and I've almost lost it like so many times that one day is gonna happen, and then I'm not sure what I'm gonna do, because this film bag is pretty much useless without the darkest light. Well, another thing to be aware or to keep in mind when you are thinking about buying this camera or using it: be careful with your darkest light.